I think the biggest change is just how visually intimidating it is while being probably more playable for everyone.
Yeah, there's a lot more kind of visual definition, I think, but it was always an interesting site to me because there's almost no elevation change, but it's also like not actually like super flat when you look at the ground closely because there's a lot of little stuff, little wrinkles and little bumps and stuff going on kind of everywhere.
Tim and I are kind of Tyler's left and right arm, so we both do a lot of both in the office and in the field work. I spend most of my time in the field in a bulldozer and an excavator doing a lot of the shaping and then kind of act as the lead shaper on many of the jobs. And then I also do a lot of the plan work, 3D renderings, all of that. At Detroit specifically, I shaped all of the bunkers. And then rough shaped the majority of the greens for Tyler to then follow, and then with Tim to finish them. So wear a lot of hats, but my role mainly at Detroit was kind of being an extra level of support and then running the bunker construction.
Yeah, so kind of, I mean, Jim covered a lot of it, but I really started working for Tyler doing a lot of master planning work, you know, bid administration, construction documentation. And then in the last couple of years too, I've started kind of helping Tyler a lot with green shaping and green finishing in particular, and then just also spending a lot more time on site with him and with Jim kind of on, you know, more general project oversight stuff. So that was kind of my role at Detroit as well. The process, the way it worked a lot of times was Jim or Tyler or somebody else would kind of, you know, rough shape a lot of the greens, you know, with, you know, on the dozer. And then me and Tyler a lot of times would work together, you know, just the two of us or with sometimes a crew of, you know, guys from the contractor to get the kind of the finish and the detailed contouring right, kind of with the sand pro and, you know, hand raking and shovels, you know, adding some mix and stuff here and there. That was a lot of my role at Detroit for sure, especially the first couple months where we were trying to, you know, trying to get a lot of greens done really quickly, was to kind of focus on the greens and getting those surfaces finished and scanned. And then over the last couple months that we were there, it was a lot of, you know, project oversight stuff, just because, especially with a project like Detroit where the pace was so quick, you know, the project oversight and quality control was really, really important. So, you know, just kind of being another pair of eyes on site.
Well, it's amazing how quick the project took place from shovel in the ground to where we are right now in November. Do you remember the first time you walked onto the club's property?
Yeah, so the irony is that the cycle of renovations is such a long, I hate to use the term sales cycle, but the plan starts 3-4 years before shovels really get in the dirt, and then there's this incredible amount of lead time. I think my first visit was back in 2021 with Tyler, and we did the master plan, and then it's been a long time coming, and then all of a sudden I think we did essentially the vast majority of the project took place in about 90 days. So when you think about it goes from this long drawn out month to month process to boom, all of a sudden it's just a new place. It's pretty crazy how it works, but yeah, it's exciting. I think I shaped 105 bunkers in about 6 weeks. So the process, and then we built 19 greens in that same time period, and then the putting green came a little bit after that. So it was a crazy timeline. I think there were over 100 guys out there at one point, which is crazy.
Yeah, and Tim, I think you and I walked the property about this time a few years ago.
Yeah, I was going to say that was the first time I think, you know, I was on site. Would have been Thanksgiving week, I think, like 3 years ago in 2022 or something, and I remember it was snowing. So yeah, that was my first time because I just happened to be in the area with family and stuff. And then kind of like Jim was saying, I went probably 3 years without being on site again until kind of the first day that the project started, when we started working on the greens and stuff. So yeah, it was a long time coming, and then a lot happened really, really quickly. But like, to me, it was one of the more enjoyable processes we've ever been a part of, just because like a lot of times it takes a while to see the finished product, and especially the way that we were sodding greens. You know, it was like we built a green, got it scanned, and then like a few weeks later you could go back and look at it, actually grassed and almost look like you could, play on it. So like the quick turnaround of being able to see your work so quickly was really, really cool.
What's the biggest difference you've noticed from that first visit to where we are today?
It's a visually striking golf course now. Seeing some of those drone videos that have come out in the last 2-3 weeks with the back nine now actually having grass on it is it's impressive now. I think before it was very monochromatic and the bunkers were just on the periphery, and now it's just you stand up on a tee and it's just visual overload. So it takes a flat site. I mean, there's 8 feet of elevation change from the low point to the high point across the whole golf course. It's as flat as a parking lot, and it takes that, and now it does not feel flat at all. So it was a lot of, I know we talked a lot about exaggerating the Z-axis in our conversations with Tyler, Tim, and I, and getting getting the vertical and with the ditches, the vertical downwards as well. So now the bottom of the ditches are 5 feet lower, the tops of the bunkers are 5 feet higher. So now you have this appearance of elevation change,
while still making it look like it fit kind of naturally into the land. So like when you look at a lot of the holes now, there's a lot more visual definition. There's a little bit more Z-axis to a lot of stuff, to a lot of the bunkers, but it doesn't look, super garish or like anything sticking out of the landscape, unnaturally. It all kind of looks like it fits really nicely together with the land, the way it is. So I think, using what was there a lot too to kind of create the definition that we wanted to. There was the opportunity to do it with some of the features that were there, even though there wasn't a lot of elevation change. So I think that Jim and Tim Furness definitely kind of like nailed that aspect of it. And that's one of the things I was more interested to see, how that kind of turned out through the process, because it's hard to visualize that stuff, even while it's going on, even while it's just a bunch of piles of dirt, but getting the heights of the bunkers and, the heights of the sand lines and the horizon lines, all that stuff, like right when you're actually building it, was kind of imperative on such a property with such little elevation change. And, I think they basically nailed that aspect of it. So
yeah, I mean, it required a lot of nuance.
Yeah.
To get, like, for example, one of the bigger changes was the 5th hole, flipping that green from the corner of the property back to where Ross had it, because that's where the majority of the elevation change on the front nine was, in that 3, 4, 5, 6 part of the northernmost portion of the property, playing to and from that ridge. So getting those bunkers in, there's 8 bunkers down the right side of the 5th hole, and you can see all of them from pretty much the entire golf hole, which is cool. But to get sand visibility, you're talking about 4 to 6 inch rises over the course of 100 yards just to get that little bit of sand poking up here or there. So it just took a lot of just detailed approach to get that final look. It's just, it looks awesome from above, but even when you're just walking down the hole, you get that same wow factor because of just the little bits of, we're going to raise this, we're going to lower this, just to get a viewport into all of them.
I mean, I'm proud of a lot of the greens, but the truth is, I mean, the greens, the final decisions and a lot of the work on them was obviously Tyler, and like he, deserves the largest amount of credit for the way the greens came out. But, I'm proud of even getting to, have a small role in working on those and giving my input and, kind of adding some little stuff here and there where we could, So, I mean, I guess, yeah, I would say overall in general, the greens, and I think we worked so hard to grind on making them so that they're, a combination of having a lot of character, but be kind of, supremely playable and have, plenty of pinnable areas. And the only way to really do that is to spend time on them, to kind of check every single square foot of the green for percentages and make sure that it's all working out the way, exactly the way you want it to. So, I guess I'd say that's what I'm proud of. Thinking about the course, 20 years from now, I mean, I hope that the club commits to maintaining the scale of the bunkers, because to me that was kind of like one of the biggest transformations. And, bunkers, they're going to evolve and change over time a little bit. Like that's kind of inevitable. But, what I think the difference between building, good bunkers and building great bunkers is, great bunkers will evolve in a way that's natural and where they still look good, 10, 15 years down the line, compared to right when they're first built, so that's kind of a key test. And I think a lot of that has to do with the way that they're shaped, the way that they fit into the land, the way that those horizon lines work, the way that, the heights and elevations of the sand lines kind of work together. And that's stuff that Jim, other Tim Furness and Tyler did so well when they were working on the bunkers. So I think, I hope that the club kind of maintains that. And even if the club has to replace the sand and kind of redo some of the edges sometimes, if that scale stays the same, then they should have the same visual effect. And even if, there's a focus on maintaining, the shapes of the bunkers and stuff like that, and with the greens, because that's something that I think was really cool and surprising about the project for me, was that, we were able to utilize technology and, put enough time and detail into every process that, like, the green shapes and the bunker shapes are so consistent with what, was shown on that 1914, the original Ross plan that we were kind of utilizing, that it was like seeing a 1914 plan come to life, once you actually finished the greens and once there was actually sand in the bunkers. And so maintaining those kind of shapes and dimensions, I think, will be really important. And, that's kind of what I would hope to see, 20 years from now, to see the club having committed to that and, really put an emphasis on maintaining that aspect of the design.
Yeah, I would say, I guess, just to piggyback off of what Tim was saying, the one thing I really hope that stands the test of time are the 4 bunkers and the bunkers that aren't necessarily in 280 to 320 yard mark off the tee kind of thing, where the golf courses evolve over time and there's different fads and themes of restoration, renovation, and all of that. And this is as pure of a restoration as you can really do, in that we had the Ross plan and we pretty much faithfully have restored the plan. And it's very early in Ross's career and it's very unique, and things are there's just a uniqueness to it. And I hope that the artistry and the golf courses in general are kind of that intersection between artistry and recreation from a holistic perspective. And I just hope that the budgetary concerns or the playability concerns and all of that do not override necessarily the artistic value of the bunkering and the beauty of the golf course, and ultimately cause the club to eliminate some of the bunkers that may be seen as ancillary or superfluous. One of the things I'm most proud of is probably that bunker complex on 10, the 3 bunkers that block the view into the green from the right side of the fairway. That's one of the cooler Ross drawn holes I've seen, and there's a 4-foot roll through the fairway. It's pretty nondescript as far as topography is concerned, but the strategy of the architecture is very subtle, and restoring that trio of bunkers really makes it so you have to challenge that left side. And if you do bail and take the easier tee shot, you become progressively more blind the further you bail off the tee into that green. So it's one of just those ways that we jacked up that Z-axis and made blindness or semi-blindness part of the architecture on a flat site. I'd also say probably that the bunkers on 3 is probably the most dramatic change from what it was bunker wise, because of the hole is largely the same golf hole. The green's just a little more refined, and the bunkering is so much more visually striking from the tee. It makes it feel like an entirely different hole. I'm just excited for the fact that I do feel like we created something that is unique and should stand the test of time, and it will cause you'll stand up on a lot of the tees and be like, I don't even know where to hit this, especially the first few times you play it. And I think that's some of the best golf holes are the ones where you stand up there and you're like, whoa, this is cool. I don't know where to go. And you start to figure that out every time you play it. So I don't know. I think it sounds like everyone's excited. It's definitely going to be a big change from a playability standpoint, as far as it's just going to feel like an entirely new golf course, even though the routing is largely the same.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of hope that there's a little bit, I mean, I'm hoping that the greens kind of play as subtle and maybe deceptive as you know, we were trying, you know, to build a lot of them, because we tried to inject a lot of subtlety to it and not just have, you know, a bunch of crazy greens that are going to be really hard, but greens that maybe there's some putts that look flat, but they're not quite flat, or maybe they're not breaking, you know, not really the way that people are expecting them to break. Because, I mean, in the end, greens are kind of like the great equalizer, you know, and even, you know, no matter how good guys get at hitting the ball, you know, a great green can still make the game interesting for just about anybody. So I guess that's kind of what I'm hoping to, is that they're a challenge for even the best players, while still being playable for everybody.